let's do some more work here. I was working in my test, and we were talking about while loops and variables. One last thing I didn't talk about yesterday was that variables are case sensitive. So that if I had a variable called yo, and a variable called yo with a capital Y, and I printed these out to my page, make sure that gets uploaded. Look at my test file. I got an error. Okay, so what's the problem? It's an obvious one to me because I just came from Ruby class. Puts is a Ruby expression. So I do echo. Wow, see? That's a problem when you're lecturing back to back here. So notice those are two separate variables. So case does matter. So most people do all lowercase or camel case. It's a personal preference on how you name your variables. Just be careful that you are consistent because those are two different variables. That's a real common error that people make. Okay, any other questions on that? I think we've covered variables. It must start with a $sign. There can be no spaces in a variable name. They can contain any number of letters, underscores, or numbers. They have to start, though, with a letter or an underscore. I cannot have a variable like this. I can't have a variable called 1yo. Okay, that is an illegal variable. It has to start with a letter or an underscore. So you'll see some variables start with an underscore here. Okay? So let's, let me fix that so it's not an error. Let's talk a little bit about moving forward with, well, first of all, I wanted to show you how we set errors. And you notice that when I put the puts here, I got an error on my output. When I looked at the file in my browser, I get an error. Okay? And when we're developing, we want to see these errors. These errors are very important to us. And by default, some errors are displayed to us, some are not. When we're developing, it's a better idea to make sure that we see every single error so that we catch them before the user does, right? We want to catch them as close to the point where we wrote the code in the first place. That's why we write a little code, we test a little code. We write a little code, we test a little code. And it makes it faster to find these errors. So there is a way to set in PHP, and typically we do it at the very top of our file. We want to tell PHP that we want to display errors. There's a method called ini set, ini set, which is initialize set, and we can set different variables for the PHP environment itself. So I want to say for the display errors environment, I want to set that to 1. Basically, I'm turning that on. I want to turn on all display of all errors. This just makes sure that depending on what host you have, maybe they have that turned off or on, whatever. I want to make sure I have that on for all of my pages. And then there are different error reporting flags or variables that I can set. And all of these constants that are built into PHP that let me, I want to display every single error that comes across. Okay? And some people do it where we can combine these together using an OR statement. That's that's combining mathematically two variables together. I can do an E strict, and that gives me all the possible errors that I could ever want, and hope, and dream for. And that way, when I'm printing on this page, let's see if I have any errors now that didn't come up. Now I see all kinds of other errors here that didn't show before, right? I get a notice. I'm getting notices. I have an undefined variable x in my PHP test.php file on line 26. So I can turn on my line numbers, right-click in this little column, go to line 26, and it says while x, and that's undefined. Remember yesterday we talked about it's okay to be undefined. It ends up being a 0. It'll define it for us. But that's a notice. That's a bad programming practice to leave your variables for the compiler to figure out. We want to set them so we know exactly what they are. So how would I get rid of this notice, for instance? Set it to something, right? Setting it to 0, I can say $x equals 0. And now I reload my page, and that got rid of those notices. So having these two lines here gave me much more strict interpretation of all of the errors that I might see on a page. So where's a better place to put this so that it shows up on every single page on my site? In my header partial, right? Because theoretically I'm going to put that in, I'm going to have my header included on every page. So at the very top of my header, I might have, and I have to do that by doing it in PHP. So I have my PHP start and end block. And I put my any set display errors and error reporting all, so that now every time I include my header, it's going to run this piece of code for that page, set that environment for me so I get all the errors. Does that make sense? Questions on that? So now let's go look at one of my blog pages, or my index. Oh, jeez. No, because it would reset it every time we went through the while loop.
No, actual down would go while and right up before the x greater than 2.
What, like this? No. No. You can't do that in JavaScript either. You do that with a for loop. A for loop, you can do that. Right, that's a different loop, though. That's a C construct, which does work in PHP as well. But all right, so I included it in my header. My index includes that file, and it doesn't look like I have any warnings. So that's a good sign. My page is all happy. It's a happy page. All right, so that will get turned on for every site, and I think that's an important piece to understand. Any questions on that from all four of you? All right, so let's move on to retrieving data from the user. Now, in an application like Ruby, we do a gets, or we do a get line in C, or a get ch in C. We do different things to get data from the user. But in PHP, it's all based on a website. So the only way we can get data from a user is how? Asking, how are you asking for input in a website? Text box, okay, through a form. Through a form that they fill out, that form data then becomes input into your program. So we can only do that through forms or through the URL itself. So let's look at some URLs to give you an example let's go to Google and do a search on PHP date. All right, so let's look at the URL that comes back at the top. Look at this garbage at the top of at the back of the URL here. It has all kinds of stuff, and if you actually look at it, you can see the query that I asked for, this &q equals PHP plus date. Those are the two terms that I pushed into their Google form, and they brought it up to what they call the query string. In a website, everything after a question mark is considered the query string. So that's another way to send data to a web page, data to a back-end process as input. All right, so let's do that one first so we don't have to worry about a form, just to show you how we can get some input into it. So if we went to my test.php, there are some methods built into PHP that allow me to retrieve that data from the URL itself. All right? And what it does is it puts it in a variable called get. All right? Get is actually an array. As you see, as I was typing it out, it shows it's an array variable, and an array holds multiple sets of information, right? And this is, in JavaScript, this is called an associative array. In PHP, it's an associative array. In Ruby, it's called a hash, if you remember hashes. And so if I want to get something from this array, I have to tell it what the value is. So let's say I want to have a name. All right? That references the value of the URL. So let's put it back up here. If I go to my test.php question mark, that defines now the rest of this stuff is a query string. Everything I can enter on this are what they call name value pairs. So I have a name equals a value. And the name can be anything, like actually name equals, and I can put in Dave. All right? So I can have, this ends up being the key, and this ends up being the value of that key. To look up that value in the array, I just enter the key that I want to look for, and it will return me the data associated with that on the other side of the equal sign. So I can take that and I can store it in a variable, and I call it name. All right? So name equals $get and the key value of name, and then I can echo this out just to see what I got. I could say something like your name is name. All right, so this is retrieving the key value name from the URL using the get array, and it stuffs that value, whatever's associated with that, into the variable name, and then I'm printing that name out to the screen again. So, oops, I lost it. So if I execute this, it says your name is Dave, and then a bunch of this other stuff that I have down here. Let's put a break tag in here so I can see it look better. All right, so I've retrieved data from the user by the form of this URL. And in HTTP protocol, there are different ways of sending data to a website. One is through this query string, and that's called a get value. And the other one is posting from a form, and that's called a post value. So I have in PHP, I have both a get array and I have a post array. So anyway, I can change this and now say Cassie. Name equals Cassie. And when I run that, now it fills in that data into I retrieved it from the get array, stuffed it in my variable name, and printed it back out to the screen. So whatever I type in here is going to be printed here. This is a long string. All right, your name is, this is a long string. So that's one way of getting data from the user. Now, it's not very practical, obviously, to make them type something in the URL, right? That doesn't make sense. But so we'll be doing this in a form, for instance. You can create URLs with this dynamically by outputting an A tag with that value in it, all kinds of different ways to get that data. But that's just one quick way to show you. Now, I can have multiple stuff in here. I can have name equals Dave, and I can separate my key value pairs with an ampersand. So I use an ampersand character, and then I have another key and another value, another variable name and a value associated with that. So I can have anything like age equals 50. So when I run that, I'm not getting that data, so I'm just throwing it away in my code. So I'd have to modify this to actually get the data out of that string. So I could say age equals $get of what? Age, right? All right, age is now the key value in my URL. Yes, see, it gives me a little error. Expected a semicolon. And then I can have another echo and just print that out. Your age is age. So now I've got two data points coming into the program. When I run it again, I'm getting Dave and 50. But in reality, I'm only 19. So Dave is 19. So anytime I change that value, and in fact, in a Google search, let's go back and look at Google, I could change this query string up here, and I could add my own plus Ruby. Okay, so notice the text box changed. I changed the URL itself. The back-end process that accepted that data took that data and put it in its own variables and output it to the screen here. See how that works? So that's a very common web practice to put things in the URL itself. All right, that's through the get variable. Any questions on that? Isn't that fun? So once age is what type of variable? What data type is being held in the age? No. From the query string here, everything is a string. Again, it's just like typing from the keyboard. If I type a 1 and a 9 and hit return on the keyboard, it comes into your program as a string. I have to tell my program that I want to use it like an integer. So PHP is very forgiving in that way. I could say something like this. Half your age is age divided by 2. All right, let's see if that works. All right, so PHP is very forgiving. If you're trying to do math with a variable, it will automatically convert it to the appropriate data type, do the math on it, and then it says, now I want to concatenate it to a string, so I have to convert it back to a string and concatenate it back in here. So it does all that for you. I don't have to do any explicit typecasting typically. I can, but typically I don't have to do that. I don't have to do any 2 strings or 2 integers or anything like that. It's all kind of done for me. It does it based on how the variable is currently being used. Very strange. That's a strange scripting thing there. So this one came out 9.5. Where's that 1 coming from? That's irritating me. Yeah, it's coming from this while loop down here. Fine, I'll just put an echo here. I like to do these HRs when I'm doing stuff like this. Yeah, the horizontal line. That's all from the while loop down below. Here's all my stuff up here. So I can do math on this. I can do anything I want with this variable once I get it into place. Isn't that cool? That's sharp stuff. All right, any questions on that? Let's use this variable now that I have and add 1 to the guy's age, and then produce a URL, an A tag, an anchor tag on the page that I can click that will keep adding 1 to his name, to his age. All right. So let's see how that works. So I can print out HTML, right? I can just do an A tag, href equals whatever, and I want it to go to what page? I want to call the same page that I'm on, which is what? Test.php. All right. And I want to append to it some query string stuff. So I'm going to put a question mark. Boy, where's the question mark? There we go. Name equals name, ampersand, age equals age, and then close my tag and add 1 to my age. All right, and up here I'm going to change my age variable to say, how would I increment my age variable? How do I add 1 to my age variable? Okay, I could do the shortcut C++ or C++ style, age++. That will add 1 to the variable and stuff it back into itself. So now this URL is going to be printed out to the screen. Let's see what happens. All right. So I start with oh, that's much better. I got an error, unexpected greater than sign on line 20. So let's go to my line 20. What's wrong with this? Very good. Didn't close the quote and put a semicolon there. I did that on purpose just to show you. All right, so now I have a URL on my page, and if I hover over it, it's a little hard to read down here, but it says age is now 20. All right, because age has been modified. Let's see, I had 19 to start with, and it's going to add 1 to that, and now the URL is going to say name equals Dave, age equals 20. So when I click on that, the URL goes to the page. 20 is now put into my variable age. It says my age is 20, and my URL says 1 longer than that. Now my age is 21. So if I keep clicking on this, my age is going to continue to go up. Isn't that useful? Not so useful yet, but just to show you the idea, I can get variables, I can recreate a page, change URLs on the page, change the content on the page based on what they've entered into the URL, and that's how a lot of sites do things. They're modifying these links on the page, getting older and dying as it progresses. All right. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Not so useful yet, but you'll see that it will become very useful here in a few minutes. All right. So I want you to try this little exercise using a while loop that we talked about down here. Print out a table that has 7, print a HTML table that has 1 row and 7 columns. All right? So it's going to look like this. I'm going to have an open table, an open TR for a row, and then I'm going to have 7 of these TD, open TD, close TD, open TD, close TD. And then I'm going to close my row, and I'm going to close my table. All right? So using a while loop, print out that structure as HTML to the page. All right, so you should be done by now. So we need some kind of a counter and a while loop. We need to start our initial condition with something. Remember, while loops have an initial condition, they have a Boolean expression, and they have some way of changing the initial condition. Okay, some way of changing the Boolean expression so that it will eventually quit. So I'm gonna do it like this. I'm gonna say I'm going to use better variables than X. I'm going to use cell, and I need 7 cells, right? So first of all, I need to echo out part of my table. And I'm going to cheat and have some inline stuff here so we can see it. Then I'm going to open my TR, and that's it for the beginning. Then at the end, after my while loop, I'm going to print out my that's weird. My closing row and my closing table. And then inside of my loop here, I'm going to do something. And my Boolean expression then, if I want this loop to run 7 times, what is my expression going to be? While cell is less than 7, okay? Because I'm going to start at 0 through 7, and then I'm going to print out, inside of here I need to increment my cell so that changes my Boolean expression. I like to do that all at the same time. So I'm going to do cell plus plus, or the same as cell plus equals 1, which is the same thing as cell equals cell plus 1, all the same thing. And then I want to echo out the cell. So what is the string for a single cell? It's an open TD and a closed TD, all right? So there's nothing in there. I'm going to put a non-breaking space inside of this. And that's a symbol for a non-breaking space, just so there's something there, because tables have a tendency to collapse if there's nothing there, and they show nothing. So I'm going to put something there and see what happens, all right? So if I did this right, first time out of the gate, look at that. So I've got a table, and I put the border on it so I could see it. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cells, all right? So I was able to, using a while loop, I'm able to dynamically generate a table with some data in it. All right? Any questions on that? Now, how would I modify this while loop to put the number of the cell inside of each of these blocks? Very good. So my variable is going to change every time, so I can just add my variable inside of the TD cell. This is the data inside of the cell block. And if I rerun that, now I've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Isn't that great? That's starting to look like a calendar, isn't it? That's a 2 weeks away assignment. Just so you know. All right, so I think that's enough for today. Any questions on what we've done? Tomorrow we'll look at using the post and creating our own form to send data to the user, to the page, so that we can then set preferences and collect data from the user through a form instead. So study up on your forms, and that's it.